Lily Harper had never been the type of woman to let life defeat her, but lately, the weight of her struggles seemed insurmountable. A single mother in her early 30s, she worked tirelessly as a librarian at the local high school, a job that brought fulfillment but barely paid enough to cover her modest lifestyle. Her small two-bedroom house on the outskirts of town was cozy, but in need of repairs she couldn't afford. Every creak of the floorboards and every draft from the cracked windows reminded her of how close she was to losing her grip on stability. Her daughter Mia, just 9 years old, was the light of her life, bright, curious, and endlessly optimistic. Yet even Mia's laughter, which echoed through their home like a melody, couldn't silence the constant hum of worry in Lily's mind. That particular Saturday morning, Lily sat at the kitchen table staring at a stack of overdue bills. The electric company had already sent a final notice, and the landlord had hinted about raising the rent. As she sipped her coffee, which had gone cold while she brooded over the numbers, she felt a familiar pang of frustration mixed with helplessness. Something had to give. She glanced at Mia, who was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, engrossed in a book. The thought of her daughter growing up with the same financial struggles Lily had faced as a child was unbearable. In a moment of desperate determination, she decided to tackle the one area of her house she had been avoiding for years, the attic. It wasn't a place of fond memories or treasures. It was a space filled with the remnants of the previous owners, combined with a few of her own forgotten belongings. The idea was simple: comb through the junk, find anything of value, and sell it to make ends meet. It was a long shot, but she had nothing to lose. Armed with an old flashlight and a pair of gloves, Lily pulled down the creaky attic ladder. A puff of dust greeted her as she climbed into the dim, musty space. The air was thick and stale, tinged with the smell of mildew and aged wood. Shafts of sunlight pierced through the small, grime-covered window, illuminating the swirling dust particles that danced in the air. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she saw piles of boxes stacked haphazardly, their labels faded and unreadable. The first hour of sorting yielded little more than frustration. There were broken picture frames, faded Christmas ornaments, and stacks of old newspapers that disintegrated at her touch. Lily sighed, wiping the sweat from her brow. This wasn't just tedious, it felt hopeless. She was about to give up when her flashlight beam landed on something unusual. Leaning against the far wall, half hidden behind a stack of boxes, was a large rectangular object covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. Curiosity piqued, she approached it cautiously, brushing away the grime with her gloved hands. Beneath the dirt was a wooden frame, its corners chipped and its gilded details barely visible under years of neglect. She tugged it free from its resting place and leaned it against the wall for a better look. The painting itself was unassuming at first glance. Its colors were muted, dulled by time, and the subject, a pastoral countryside scene with golden fields, a lone cottage, and a figure standing by a lake, seemed ordinary. But there was something about the brushwork, the way the light seemed to shimmer off the water despite the painting's age, that made her pause. Lily brought the painting downstairs, setting it on the dining room table under better light. She used an old rag to clean the surface, revealing details that had been obscured by dust. The figure in the painting, she realized, wasn't just standing. It was gazing wistfully at the horizon, as if lost in thought. The scene was both serene and haunting, evoking a sense of longing she couldn't quite explain. "Mom, what's that?" Mia's voice startled her. The girl stood at the edge of the table, her head tilted as she studied the painting. "I don't know," Lily admitted, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Just something I found in the attic." "Probably nothing. Is it worth anything?" Mia asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Lily laughed softly. "I doubt it, but who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky." That night, after Mia had gone to bed, Lily found herself unable to stop thinking about the painting. It was likely worthless, but the idea that it could be valuable had lodged itself in her mind. She sat at her laptop, Googling phrases like old countryside painting, how to identify valuable art, and signatures on old paintings. The results were inconclusive, but they planted a seed of hope. As the hours ticked by, Lily felt a growing sense of anticipation. What if this painting was the key to solving her financial problems? What if it could change her life? The attic had always been a place of forgotten things, but maybe, just maybe, it had held a treasure all along. The following Monday, as the morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, Lily sat staring at the painting propped up on the counter. The soft golden hues of the countryside scene seemed to glow in the sunlight, giving it an almost magical quality. She had spent the weekend alternating between researching the painting and convincing herself it was probably nothing. Still, a nagging voice in the back of her mind urged her to find out for certain. Her limited online searches had revealed little, but one thing was clear: she needed an expert's opinion. After dropping Mia off at school, Lily loaded the painting into her car. It barely fit in the trunk, its frame jutting out awkwardly. She had called ahead to a local antique shop downtown, a place she vaguely remembered from a flyer pinned on the library's bulletin board. The shop, quaintly named Timeless Treasures, was tucked between a bakery and a second-hand bookstore on Main Street. Its display window showcased an eclectic mix of vintage jewelry, old clocks, and faded postcards. As Lily pushed open the shop's door, a small bell jingled, announcing her arrival. The air inside smelled faintly of wood polish and aged paper. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with a kind face and spectacles perched on the tip of his nose. He looked up from a ledger, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Good morning," he greeted, his voice warm and inviting. "What can I do for you today?" Lily hesitated, suddenly self-conscious about the painting she had brought. "Hi, I was hoping you could take a look at something for me. It's probably nothing, but I thought it might be worth checking." The man smiled, gesturing for her to come closer. "Let's have a look. I'm George, by the way. George Bellamy." Lily introduced herself as she carefully brought the painting into the shop. George's expression changed the moment he saw it. He stepped out from behind the counter, his movements slow but deliberate, and approached the painting as if it were a rare jewel. "May I?" he asked, motioning to touch it. "Of course," Lily replied, watching nervously as he examined the frame and the canvas. George adjusted his glasses and tilted the painting under the light, his fingers tracing the faint signature in the bottom corner. For a long moment, he didn't speak, his focus entirely on the artwork. The silence was unbearable. "Well," Lily finally blurted out, her anxiety bubbling over. "Is it worth anything?" George straightened up, his expression unreadable. "Where did you find this?" "In my attic," Lily said. "It's been up there for years, think. The house belonged to another family before us, so I don't even know how it got there." George nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the painting. "Ms. Harper, I don't want to alarm you, but this might be something extraordinary. The brushwork, the detail, the composition, this style is unmistakable. It resembles the work of Jameson Hale, a celebrated artist from the early 20th century." Lily blinked, the name unfamiliar to her. "Jameson Hale? Should I know who that is?" "He was a master of impressionist landscapes," George explained, his excitement growing. "Hale's works are incredibly rare. Many were lost during the war or destroyed in fires. If this is an original, it could be worth a fortune, millions even." The word millions echoed in Lily's mind, almost too surreal to comprehend. Her knees felt weak, and she gripped the edge of the counter for support. "You're kidding," she whispered. "I'm not," George assured her. "But we need to confirm it. I can arrange for an expert in fine art to authenticate it. It'll take a few days, but if it's genuine," he let the implication hang in the air. For the rest of the appointment, George meticulously documented the painting, taking photographs and notes. Lily signed a release form, allowing the painting to be sent to an authentication expert in New York. As she left the shop, her heart raced with a mix of disbelief and hope. Driving home, her mind buzzed with possibilities. What if the painting really was worth millions? It could change everything. No more worrying about bills or scraping by to give Mia the life she deserved. She could fix up the house, save for Mia's college fund, maybe even take a vacation, something she hadn't done in years. But beneath the excitement was a strange unease. Why had the painting been hidden in her attic? Who had put it there, and why had it been forgotten? That night, as she tucked Mia into bed, Lily couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing on her. The painting wasn't just an object anymore. It was a question, a puzzle waiting to be solved. And with every answer she sought, she felt herself being drawn into a story far bigger than she had imagined. The days that followed were a whirlwind of anticipation and restlessness for Lily. George had promised to contact her as soon as he heard back from the authentication expert, but the wait seemed endless. Every time her phone buzzed, she felt a jolt of nervous energy, only to be disappointed by spam calls or mundane reminders. To distract herself, Lily dove into research about Jameson Hale, the artist George believed had painted the countryside scene. She started with the basics, spending her evenings scrolling through art history blogs and forums. Hale, she discovered, had been a celebrated impressionist in the early 1900s. His works, often inspired by the English countryside, were renowned for their delicate interplay of light and shadow. But what intrigued her most was the mystery surrounding his lost pieces. Several of his paintings had vanished during World War II, reportedly stolen or hidden to protect them from destruction. The thought struck Lily like a lightning bolt. Could her painting be one of those lost treasures? The idea seemed far-fetched, almost fantastical, but it aligned too perfectly with the gaps in Hale's story. She decided to dig deeper, combing through her family's history in search of a connection. One evening, she pulled out an old shoebox filled with photographs and documents she had inherited after her mother's passing. Sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, with Mia curled up next to her doing homework, Lily sifted through the faded memories. Most of the photos were familiar, snapshots of her grandparents in their younger years, their smiling faces frozen in black and white stills. But then she found something that made her pause. A photograph of her grandmother, Eleanor, standing in front of a grand estate. The estate was unlike anything Lily had seen in her family's modest background. It was large and imposing, with ivy climbing its stone walls and manicured gardens stretching out in every direction. Eleanor, dressed in a simple but elegant dress, looked out of place against the opulence. There was no date on the photo, but the handwritten note on the back caught Lily's attention. Summer of 39. Ashwick Manor. Ashwick Manor, Lily murmured aloud, the name unfamiliar to her. What's that, Mom? Mia asked, looking up from her math worksheet. Just a name, Lily replied, her mind already racing. She made a mental note to investigate it further. The next morning, after dropping Mia at school, Lily visited the local library where she worked. She used the archives section to search for any mention of Ashwick Manor. To her surprise, the manor had a rich history. It had been a private estate in England during the early 20th century, owned by a family known for their art collection. During World War II, the manor had been partially destroyed in a bombing raid, and many of its treasures were lost or scattered. Lily's heart pounded as she read about the connection between Ashwick Manor and stolen art. Was it possible her grandmother had been involved? She needed answers, and there was only one person who might have them, her great-aunt Margaret, Eleanor's younger sister. Margaret, now in her late 80s, lived in a nursing home a few towns over. The drive to the nursing home was filled with nervous anticipation. Lily hadn't seen Aunt Margaret in years, not since her mother's funeral. As she walked into the quiet, sunlit facility, she felt a pang of guilt for not visiting sooner. A nurse directed her to Margaret's room, where the elderly woman sat by the window, knitting. "Lily," Margaret exclaimed, her voice warm despite its frailty. "What a lovely surprise." After catching up briefly, Lily broached the subject. "Aunt Margaret, I found something in my attic, a painting. George Bellamy, the antique dealer, thinks it might be a lost work by Jameson Hale." Margaret's hands stilled, her eyes narrowing as if she were searching her memory. "Hale, you say?" "Yes," Lily continued. "And I came across a photo of Grandma Eleanor in front of Ashwick Manor. Do you know anything about it?" For a moment, Margaret said nothing, her gaze distant. Then, with a deep sigh, she set her knitting aside. "Eleanor never talked much about that time, but I remember the summer of '39. Our parents sent her to England to work as a companion for an elderly lady who lived at Ashwick Manor. It was meant to be a way for her to see the world before settling down. And the painting?" Lily pressed. Margaret hesitated, her expression clouded. "I don't know about a painting, but Eleanor came back from Ashwick different, quieter, sadder. She never told me why. But during the war, she insisted we hide certain things in the attic. She said it was for safekeeping." Lily's pulse quickened. "What kind of things?" "Books, trinkets, some paintings," Margaret said. "But she made me promise not to touch them. She said they weren't ours to keep." Lily's mind reeled. Could the painting have been one of those items? And if so, why had Eleanor been so adamant about hiding it? As she drove home that evening, Lily felt a mix of exhilaration and unease. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but they raised even more questions. Who had the painting truly belonged to? Why had Eleanor felt compelled to hide it? And what secrets had she taken to her grave? Lily couldn't shake the conversation with her great-aunt Margaret. The idea that her grandmother Eleanor had deliberately hidden the painting in the attic, along with other items she believed didn't belong to the family, gnawed at her. It felt like a riddle Eleanor had left behind, one that Lily was now determined to solve. The following evening, after tucking Mia into bed, she sat at the kitchen table with a painting propped up before her. The soft glow of the overhead light illuminated its delicate brushstrokes, and for the first time, Lily noticed something she hadn't seen before, a faint marking on the back of the canvas. Carefully flipping the painting over, she examined the mark more closely. It was a small crest, embossed into the canvas itself, a shield flanked by 2 lions with the initials AM beneath it. Her heart raced. A quick search online revealed that the crest belonged to Ashwick Manor, the estate her grandmother had worked at during the summer of 1939. The connection was undeniable now. This painting had once been part of the manor's renowned art collection. But how had it ended up in Eleanor's possession? Unable to sleep, Lily decided to call George Bellamy the next morning. When she explained her discovery, he responded with the same enthusiasm he had shown during their first meeting. "Lily, this is significant," he said. "If the painting was part of Ashwick Manor's collection, it may have been presumed lost or stolen during the war. This could make it even more valuable, not just financially, but historically." But George's excitement was tempered by a note of caution. "You should also be prepared for the possibility that its provenance might complicate things. If it was stolen, there could be legal implications, especially if the original owners or their descendants are still alive." The thought sent a chill down Lily's spine. She thanked George and hung up, her mind spinning. Could her grandmother have taken the painting without permission? The idea seemed inconceivable. Eleanor had always been a woman of integrity, at least as far as Lily had known. Determined to uncover the truth, Lily visited Margaret again the following day. This time she brought the painting with her, carefully wrapped in an old blanket. When she unveiled it in Margaret's small, sunlit room, the older woman gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Good heavens," Margaret whispered. "That's it. That's the painting. You've seen it before?" Lily asked, leaning forward eagerly. Margaret nodded, her eyes misty with emotion. Eleanor spoke about it once, just once. She said it was called Fields of Solace. She never told me how she came to have it, but she said it was more than just a painting. It was a promise. A promise. Lily repeated, confused. What did she mean? Margaret hesitated, as though weighing whether to share the truth. Finally, she sighed and began to speak. During her time at Ashwick Manor, Eleanor grew close to the family who lived there, especially the eldest son, William Ashwick. They were fond of each other. Lily's eyes widened. "Are you saying they were in love?" Margaret nodded slowly. Yes, though they couldn't admit it openly. William was expected to marry someone of his social standing, and Eleanor knew she would never be accepted. But that summer, as the world stood on the brink of war, they found solace in each other. William gave her the painting as a token of their bond. He said it was a piece of his soul, something to remember him by. But why would she hide it? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Margaret's expression darkened. Because their love wasn't meant to be. When the war broke out, William stayed behind to fight for his country. Eleanor returned home, heartbroken but resigned. A few months later, she learned that William had been killed in action. She also learned something else. His family believed she had stolen the painting. It caused a terrible scandal. Eleanor couldn't bear the thought of their accusations tarnishing William's memory, so she hid it away and never spoke of it again. Lily felt a lump rise in her throat. The painting wasn't just an object. It was a symbol of a love that had defied social norms and been destroyed by the cruelty of war. Why didn't she return it to the Ashwicks after the war? She asked. Margaret shook her head. I think she wanted to, but by then the family had lost everything. The manor was in ruins and the Ashwicks had scattered. Eleanor must have decided it was better to keep it hidden where it couldn't hurt anyone. As Lily drove home that evening, the weight of the story pressed heavily on her heart. The painting wasn't a stolen treasure or a simple heirloom. It was a legacy of love, loss, and sacrifice. And now, decades later, it had fallen into her hands. The question was, what would she do with it? Lily sat alone in her living room that evening, the painting leaning against the wall in front of her, as if it were silently watching her wrestle with her thoughts. The warm hues of the golden fields in the painting seemed almost alive in the dim light, whispering tales of love and longing. She wrapped her hands around her mug of tea, seeking warmth and clarity, but none came. The painting's history had taken on a weight she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just a valuable artifact anymore. It was a relic of her grandmother's love, loss, and sacrifice. The phone buzzed on the coffee table, breaking her reverie. She glanced at the screen. It was George Bellamy. His voice was animated when she answered. Lily, I've received confirmation from the experts. It's genuine. Fields of Solace is an original Jameson Hale, and it's worth more than we initially thought. We're talking close to $8 million at auction. The number was staggering. $8 million. Her breath caught as she tried to process it. $8 million could change her life and Mia's future forever. She could pay off the house, secure Mia's college education, and live without the constant fear of financial ruin. It was a number so immense that it seemed to solve every problem she'd ever faced. 8 million, she repeated softly, more to herself than to George. Yes, George confirmed. But Lily, there's something else you should know. The Ashwick family has been searching for this painting for years. They believed it was lost during the war. If word gets out, they might claim it as theirs. Lily felt a pang in her chest. Do they have a legal claim to it? That depends, George said carefully. If you can prove it was a gift to your grandmother, then legally it belongs to you. But morally, well, that's a different matter. After thanking George, Lily ended the call and sat back, staring at the painting. The moral weight of the situation pressed down on her. Could she really sell something that had once been so meaningful to another family? But then, wasn't her family deserving of a better life too? Her grandmother had hidden this painting for a reason. Wasn't it her legacy to pass on? The next morning, Lily decided to talk to Mia about it. Sitting together at the breakfast table, she explained the basics of the situation in terms her daughter could understand. If we sell the painting, we'll have enough money to fix the house, maybe even move somewhere nicer. You could go to any college you want. Mia's eyes lit up. Really? That's amazing. But then her expression turned thoughtful. What if the painting belongs to someone else? Wouldn't it be like stealing? Lily was taken aback by her daughter's innocent yet piercing question. It's complicated, she admitted. Your great-grandmother was given this painting by someone she loved very much. But that person's family might want it back. Mia tilted her head, her small hands cradling her mug of hot chocolate. If it made great-grandma happy, maybe it could make them happy too. But she paused, biting her lip. We need money, don't we? Lily nodded slowly. Yes, we do. The conversation stayed with her as she went about her day. Everywhere she turned, she was reminded of the choice before her. At the grocery store, she hesitated over whether to buy the slightly more expensive organic apples Mia loved. At work, she caught herself calculating how many years of her salary it would take to match the painting's worth. The answer was disheartening. That evening, she received another call, this time from a lawyer representing a distant relative of the Ashwick family. The woman, polite but firm, explained that the Ashwicks had learned of the painting's existence and wanted to discuss its return. Our clients are willing to negotiate fairly, the lawyer said. They understand the painting has been in your family for decades, but it is a priceless piece of their heritage. After the call, Lily felt as though the walls of her small house were closing in. The Ashwicks were offering a settlement, but it would be a fraction of what the painting was worth at auction. Yet, selling it outright felt wrong. Her grandmother had hidden this painting out of love, not greed. To reduce it to a mere transaction felt like a betrayal. Desperate for clarity, Lily went back to Margaret's nursing home. She recounted everything: the Ashwick's interest, the lawyer's call, and her own financial struggles. Margaret listened intently, her hands folded in her lap. Lily, she said gently, Eleanor would want you to do what's best for you and Mia. She hid the painting because she was protecting William's memory, but that doesn't mean you have to carry the same burden. You have a chance to give Mia the life Eleanor would have wanted for her great-granddaughter. But what about the Ashwicks? Lily asked, her voice trembling. Margaret's gaze softened. Sometimes the past belongs in the past. They've lived without the painting for this long. Perhaps it's time they learned to move on, just as Eleanor had to. Lily left the nursing home with a heavy heart, no closer to a decision. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, she realized there was no simple answer. Whatever choice she made, it would change her life and the lives of others forever. The decision weighed heavily on Lily, but before she could make her choice, something about the painting began to gnaw at her. It wasn't just the story behind it or its immense value. It was a feeling, a whisper at the edges of her mind that there was more to the painting than she yet understood. The late evening light caught the canvas as it leaned against the wall, illuminating details she hadn't noticed before. Something about it felt incomplete, as if the painting itself was trying to tell her a secret. Unable to shake the feeling, Lily decided to examine it more closely. She cleared the dining table, laid the painting face up, and retrieved a magnifying glass from Mia's school science kit. With care, she traced every brushstroke, every detail of the composition. Her gaze lingered on the figure in the painting, the lone person standing at the edge of the lake. The figure's posture exuded an almost overwhelming melancholy, as though it were frozen in a moment of longing or regret. As she worked her way along the edges of the canvas, she noticed faint lines near the bottom, barely visible beneath the layers of paint. At first, she thought they were scratches or imperfections caused by time, but they seemed deliberate, too symmetrical to be random. Her curiosity piqued. She flipped the painting over again, examining the back of the canvas in the old wooden frame. It was then she saw it. A small section of the frame seemed slightly raised, as if it didn't fit quite right. With trembling hands, Lily fetched a flathead screwdriver from the kitchen drawer and gently pried at the section. It gave way with a soft creak, revealing a narrow compartment hollowed into the frame. Inside was a folded piece of aged, yellowing paper. Her breath caught as she carefully removed it, her hand shaking as though she were holding something sacred. She unfolded the paper slowly, revealing an intricate cursive script. It was a letter. The ink had faded in places, but the words were still legible. Her heart raced as she began to read. "My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, then I am no longer by your side, and the world has taken a turn I could not have imagined. I gave you this painting not just as a symbol of our love, but as a promise that no matter what lies ahead, you would always carry a piece of me with you. The world we dreamed of may never come to pass. The war has cast a shadow over everything, and I fear that by the time you read these words, I will have been taken by it. But I beg of you, do not let this painting become a reminder of what we lost. Let it be a beacon of what we had, if only for a fleeting moment. Share it with the world when the time is right, and let its beauty speak of the love that once was. But if keeping it hidden brings you peace, then so be it. Whatever you choose, I trust you, as I've always trusted you. Yours eternally, William." Lily's vision blurred as tears welled in her eyes. The weight of the letter hit her like a wave, its words filled with raw emotion and the echoes of a love that had been stolen by time and circumstance. She read it again and again, each time feeling as though she were peeling back another layer of her grandmother's life. William's words transformed the painting in her eyes. It was no longer just a work of art or a valuable asset. It was a message, a testament to a love that had defied societal expectations and endured even in the face of war. It was also a plea, a deeply personal request that now extended to her. William had entrusted Eleanor with the painting, and now, through Eleanor's choices, he had entrusted it to Lily. Mia wandered into the room, rubbing her eyes and clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mom, why are you crying?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. Lily wiped her cheeks quickly and motioned for Mia to join her. "Come here, sweetheart. I want to show you something." Mia climbed into her lap, her small hands tracing the edges of the letter. Lily read it aloud to her, her voice trembling with emotion. When she finished, Mia looked at the painting with a new sense of wonder. "It's like a treasure map," Mia said, her eyes wide. "But instead of leading to gold, it leads to a story." Lily smiled through her tears. "That's exactly right, honey. It's a story about love and bravery and choices." Mia tilted her head thoughtfully. "What are you going to do with it?" Lily exhaled slowly, the question hanging in the air like a weight. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I think I need to do what William and Grandma would have wanted. I need to honor their story." The revelation of the letter changed everything. The decision wasn't just about money or morality anymore. It was about legacy. The painting wasn't simply a possession. It was a piece of her family's history, a bridge connecting past and present. As she sat with Mia that night, the letter and the painting before them, Lily felt both the enormity of her responsibility and the beauty of the opportunity it presented. But honoring the past would mean confronting the future, and the decisions ahead would test her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The letter stayed with Lily, weighing heavily on her mind. It wasn't just a relic of her grandmother's hidden love. It was a call to action, urging her to consider the painting's greater significance. But it also left her with unanswered questions. Why had her grandmother kept the letter hidden? What did she hope to shield the family from by burying this part of her past? And what had become of the Ashwick family after the war? Determined to find out more, Lily decided to dig deeper into her grandmother's story. She returned to the nursing home to visit Margaret, clutching the letter and painting as if they were sacred artifacts. Margaret's face softened as Lily unfolded the letter for her to see. "Eleanor never told me about this," Margaret murmured, her eyes misting as she read William's words. "But it doesn't surprise me. She was always so private about her feelings, especially after the war. I think she was afraid of being judged." "Judged for what?" Lily asked gently. "For loving someone she wasn't supposed to," Margaret said, shaking her head. "The world was different back then, Lily. Class mattered. Status mattered. Eleanor must have felt that no one would understand what she and William shared." The conversation lingered in Lily's mind as she drove home. She felt a growing responsibility to uncover the rest of the story, not just for herself, but for her grandmother, for William, and for Mia, who was beginning to ask deeper questions about the painting and its origins. Lily turned to the internet for help, scouring genealogy websites and social media platforms for any trace of the Ashwick family. Days of searching yielded little until she stumbled upon a small historical society in England dedicated to preserving the history of Ashwick Manor. Its website mentioned a living descendant, Caroline Ashwick, who had relocated to the United States years ago and now resided just 2 states away. It took Lily several hours to work up the courage to send an email to the society, explaining her connection to the painting and asking for Caroline's contact information. To her surprise, the response came quickly, and within a few days, she was on the phone with Caroline herself. Caroline's voice was warm but cautious. "You're telling me you have fields of solace?" she asked incredulously. "The painting my family thought was lost during the war." "Yes," Lily said, her hands trembling as she held the phone. "It was hidden in my grandmother's attic. She worked at Ashwick Manor during the summer of 1939. There was a pause, and Lily could hear the emotion in Caroline's voice when she spoke again. "My grandfather used to tell stories about that painting. He said it was his brother William's favorite piece. He would sit by it for hours, staring at the fields and dreaming of a simpler life. When the painting disappeared, it was like losing William all over again." Lily's breath caught. "You mean William was your great-uncle?" "Yes," Caroline confirmed. "He was the heart of the family. When he died, it broke my grandfather. Losing the painting only deepened the wound. It's incredible to think it's been preserved all this time." The conversation stretched on for hours, with Lily and Caroline sharing pieces of their family's histories, weaving together a tapestry of connection that spanned generations. Caroline revealed that her family had scattered after the war, struggling to rebuild after losing both their ancestral home and the treasures within it. Finally, Caroline asked the question Lily had been dreading. "What do you plan to do with the painting?" Lily hesitated, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of her family's struggles pressing against the hope in Caroline's voice. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "I want to honor both our families. I just don't know how." Caroline surprised her with a quiet laugh. "Lily, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. But whatever you decide, please know that our family holds no bitterness. If my great-uncle trusted your grandmother with a painting, then I trust her judgment and yours." The call left Lily more conflicted than ever, but it also filled her with a strange sense of peace. Caroline's words reminded her that the painting wasn't just a source of pain or conflict. It was a bridge connecting two families separated by time, war, and circumstance. Over the next few weeks, Lily reached out to other distant relatives, piecing together fragments of both her family's and the Ashwick family's stories. She learned that William had been an artist himself, sketching small landscapes that mirrored the themes of Fields of Solace. Some of his sketches had been preserved, and Caroline even sent Lily photographs of them. Mia was especially fascinated by the sketches. "It's like they're all part of one big puzzle," she said one evening, tracing the lines of a photograph with her finger. "Great-grandma and William must have really loved each other." "They did," Lily agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "And maybe that love wasn't meant to last forever, but it left something behind. Something beautiful." As the pieces of the puzzle came together, Lily began to see the painting not as a burden, but as a gift. It wasn't just a story of love and loss. It was a testament to the resilience of two families, a reminder that even in the darkest times, beauty and connection could endure. But one question still lingered. How could she best honor this legacy while ensuring her own family's future? The answer, she knew, would require courage and sacrifice, just like Eleanor and William had shown so many years ago. The decision Lily had been dreading loomed larger with each passing day. The painting sat silently in the living room, its beauty a constant reminder of the legacy it carried. Every time she looked at it, she thought of Eleanor and William, of their love and sacrifice, and of the families connected through this single work of art. Yet she also thought of Mia and the life she could give her daughter if she sold it. The weight of that choice was almost unbearable. One afternoon, after weeks of deliberation, Lily made a decision. She couldn't keep the painting hidden any longer. It was time to honor both her family's past and her daughter's future. She arranged a meeting with Caroline Ashwick at a local gallery, inviting George Bellamy as a neutral party to help mediate the discussion. When Caroline arrived, Lily was struck by the older woman's resemblance to the figure in the painting, the same quiet grace, the same air of wistful longing. Caroline carried a small leather-bound book, which she clutched tightly as they exchanged pleasantries. As they stood before Fields of Solace, Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered. "My great-uncle would have been so proud to know it survived." Lily nodded, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I've thought a lot about what to do with this painting. It's more than just a piece of art. It's a piece of both our family stories. I want to do what's right, but I also have to think about my daughter's future." Caroline placed a comforting hand on Lily's arm. "I understand. My family lost so much during the war, but we also found ways to rebuild. If the painting can help you and Mia, I won't stand in the way of that." George, who had been quietly observing, cleared his throat. "There might be a way to honor both the painting's history and its value. If the painting were auctioned, we could set aside a portion of the proceeds for the Ashwick Historical Society to preserve their legacy while still ensuring Lily and her family benefit." The idea hung in the air, a delicate balance between fairness and practicality. Lily considered it, her heart heavy but hopeful. "That sounds right," she said finally. "But before anything is decided, there's one more thing I need to share." She reached into her bag and pulled out William's letter, handing it to Caroline. "I found this hidden in the frame," she explained. "It's a letter William wrote to my grandmother. It explains why he gave her the painting and what it meant to him." Caroline's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. She read it silently, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she pressed the letter to her chest and looked at Lily with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you for sharing this with me. It's like hearing his voice again after all these years." But then Caroline surprised Lily by opening the leather-bound book she had brought. Inside were sketches, William's sketches. As she flipped through the pages, Lily saw rough studies of the same countryside scene from the painting, along with notes in the margins. The final page held a sketch of Eleanor herself, her face serene and her eyes filled with quiet strength. Beneath it, William had written, "For Eleanor, who taught me what love means." "I thought you should have this," Caroline said, handing the book to Lily. "It's clear that Eleanor meant everything to him. This book belongs with your family." Overwhelmed by emotion, Lily accepted the book, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you," she whispered. The auction was held a month later at a prestigious gallery. Fields of Solace sold for over $9 million, a record-breaking sum that stunned everyone in attendance. True to their agreement, a significant portion of the proceeds was donated to the Ashwick Historical Society, ensuring that the legacy of the manor and its art collection would be preserved for generations to come. With her share of the money, Lily paid off her debts, renovated her home, and set up a college fund for Mia. But she also did something else. She used part of the funds to establish a small gallery in her grandmother's name. The gallery displayed William's sketches alongside a replica of Fields of Solace, accompanied by the story of the love and sacrifice that had connected their families. The opening of the gallery drew visitors from near and far, many of whom were touched by the story behind the painting. Elderly patrons, in particular, lingered in front of the sketches, their expressions filled with quiet reflection. One woman, her hair silver and her hands clasped tightly together, approached Lily on the gallery's opening day. "My husband fought in the war," the woman said softly. "He used to say that art reminded him of what we were fighting for. Thank you for sharing this story. It's important." Lily smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you for saying that. It's a story that deserves to be told." As the years passed, the gallery became a cherished community landmark, a place where people came to reflect on love, loss, and the resilience of the human spirit. Mia grew up surrounded by her family's history, inspired by the legacy of Eleanor and William. And Lily, though she had never expected it, found herself at peace. The painting had been worth millions, but its true value lay in the connections it had forged, the stories it had uncovered, and the lives it had touched. In the end, it wasn't just a work of art. It was a testament to the enduring power of love and the courage to choose what truly matters.